You know that your team sucks and mine is great. It's time for AFFL hate. Gonna make them pissed, gonna make them mad. I'm gonna do them dirty. Oh man, semifinal week. My deepest trip into the playoffs yet. I know it took me 4 whole years to reach this far. A lot of people didn't think I could do it. And yet here I am. I thought I could do it, of course, and then I did it. That's how these things work. The final 4 teams are known as the Power 4 in the league. ISIS, Animal House, Little Baby Jesus, Hagak. Although Little Baby Jesus has a little bit of a question mark at running back, none of these teams have real holes. All are solid contenders. All belong here. Any of them could win the league, and it would be a good result for the year. And so let me discuss the season as a whole and make a little confession here, okay? The league is fine. The points kind of work out. I still think there's a little much emphasis on division and head-to-head records. You know, Gary probably didn't deserve to make the playoffs and maybe wouldn't have made the playoffs if he wasn't in the weakest division. I wouldn't mind seeing something that sort of couches the head-to-head record. But in reality, I only was concerned about it this year because it looked like it was going to cost me a trip to the playoffs. When I was 1-3 and Runny in Philadelphia was 4-0, or when I was 3-5 and Timmy doesn't have any friends was 5-3, that's when I was most concerned with the injustice that I was putting up points and not being rewarded for it. Yeah, sure, I was using Riggins rigs as in all of my examples as evidence of like, hey, it's not just affecting me, it's affecting other owners. Truth be told, I really could not care less about Riggins rigs and their struggles. In fact, I find it to be highly amusing that a otherwise good team goes against incredibly high point totals week in and week out. If I started off the season 4-2, 5-3, I couldn't have cared less. And eventually, you know, the tide turned. All it took was me winning 6 straight games to close the season. Runny, of course, fell off because that team was hot garbage. Scott fell off last week with a really terrible playoff performance. So all is right in the world. I do feel like whatever happens this season, I'll be fine with it. It's right. There is a lot of luck involved at this point, but mainly because all 4 teams left are very good. The only thing that's really going to separate them is one guy having an unexpectedly great day, you know, a 30-point game, or a superstar having an unexpectedly low game, a 5-point game that cost somebody. And interestingly, these last 3 games of the season, which will determine the 9, 10, 11, and 12 picks next season, really are going to have an effect on how these teams are set up for next year. ISIS, not the strongest of the 4 going into next year. Only A.J. Green, Randall Cobb, and Kaepernick, if he manages to make it through the summer, return to the ISIS. For Animal House, they come back next season with Jamal Charles, Le'Veon Bell, Ryan Matthews, and Jeremy Maclin. That's a good team. That team is set up to make another run next year, depending on who they can pick up. By the way, Scott Myers wanted to hang him up last year. Drafted up a formal notice on heavy stock paperweight. Got it notarized, sent it to Gary, said, I'm out. Then he realized, wait a minute, I kind of have a good team going into this season. Let me see if I can make one last magical run a la Jerome Bettis and go out on top. But he might have the same conversation with himself next summer and realize, well, maybe I'll try again to make one more magical run. Because he is going to lose this season. If you come back only because you feel like you can win the title, you're not going to win the title. That's just how these things work out. Hagak, they do lose Demarius, but they come back next year with an ever-aging Arian Foster and a DeMarco Murray. You know what? Depending on where Murray ends up, if he signs as a free agent somewhere like Atlanta, Jacksonville, wherever, this might not be that good of a team coming back next year. Foster is definitely going to get hurt again next year. Hagak really needs to finish it off this year. Or lose this week and get the 9th spot. And the team of the Final 4, the Power 4, that's looking best for next season. Aaron Rodgers, Mike Evans, Andre Ellington, Sammy Watkins, all back next year. Little baby Jesus is set up. They are ready to go. And then my point is, the reason those 9, 10, 11, 12 picks are so interesting going into the next draft is because there's a decent amount of good players that are on expiring contracts. There's a decent amount of young guys that are coming up that are going to be good first or second round picks next year. Whoever can pluck somebody away that one of the other Power 4 teams want really could have a leg up going into next season. But why are we looking ahead when we have two massive games in front of us? All four of these teams predicted by CBS to put up triple digits. CBS says Animal House will score 119.5. Little Baby Jesus 102.4. Says Hagak will score 108.2. And ISIS will score 111.8. There you go. Why even do the preview when CBS has done it for us? Except for this one little fact. CBS is always wrong about their predictions. So let's take a look at these games. Animal House, 10-4. Had a bye week last week. Little Baby Jesus, 9-6. Most importantly, 1-0 in the playoffs. Two of the league's best quarterbacks going head-to-head in this one. Aaron Rodgers for Jesus. Tom Brady for Animal House. Problem, Aaron Rodgers is going up against that Buffalo defense in Buffalo. That's the same defense that held Peyton Manning to 2 points last week. On the other hand, it's not such a clear advantage for Tom Brady because he's going up against a really good Miami defense. Good defense, division rival, team that has always given him trouble. Yes, it is in New England. That will make a difference. But historic issues for Brady against Miami. So, let's call it a wash there. Don't see either one of these quarterbacks having that big blowout, breakout, 32-point game that decides this one. Let's go to the running backs. For Animal House, Le'Veon Bell going up against a really, really bad Falcons run defense. Jamal Charles going up against a really bad Oakland defense. And Ryan Matthews, who is hurt, and going up against a Denver defense, which is pretty good, and you got to think Denver's going to have the lead a lot. Don't see Matthews doing a lot here, but not a lot of options on the Animal House bench. Terrence West, no. Ben Tate, of course not. Jerick McKinnon, he's hurt. Marcus Wheaton? Harry Douglas? Wheaton, he hasn't done anything because Bryant has taken all the heat and light that Wheaton maybe was going to get this year. Dree Archer, that's another option, except he doesn't play anymore. So maybe Harry Douglas. Here's the problem. If Roddy White ends up missing this game, which is possible, not likely, but possible, then you need to put Harry Douglas in the lineup anyways. And if Julio misses this game, and Harry Douglas gets promoted to the number 2 spot, then I think you definitely put Douglas in for Matthews. But we'll see how that shakes out. The one thing that we do know for sure is that Animal House has a massive, massive advantage at the running back position because Jonathan Stewart is the only running back for Little Baby Jesus. Yes, Jonathan Stewart went off last week. I'm well aware of it. But let me point a couple of things out here. One, Cam is out because of his car accident. Derek Anderson is going to be the starter. So even though the Tampa defense is not good by any measures, I feel like they'll be looking to take away the run. Two, Riverboat Ron Rivera, after Stewart's amazing performance last week, said, we got to get D'Angelo Williams more touches. So look for some coaching to hold back Stewart as well. That's the only running back Little Baby Jesus is throwing out there. So again, big advantage to Animal House. But this is a passing league. Mike Evans going up against Carolina, of course, since we just talked about that. Steve Smith going up against Jacksonville. He has not been as hot as he was to start the season, but he is going up against Jacksonville. He should at least get into the 12 to 15 range, which is all you really want for your guys this week. And Sammy Watkins going up against Green Bay. Green Bay got a couple of good cover guys, but you got to figure Buffalo's going to be throwing the ball a lot this week. And then Gronk against Miami. That's an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see if Gronk can go off. It's been a while since he had one of those explosive games. Miami does have a good defense, as we mentioned. Guys that can probably hang with Gronk a little bit just to slow him down. But on the other side, we have Jeremy Maclin. He's had a great season. Dallas secondary is not that great, but Mark Sanchez has been holding him down. And then at the other spot, you have maybe Roddy White, depending on his health. Maybe Harry Douglas, depending on Julio's health and Roddy's health. Maybe White and Douglas. Here's an advantage for those guys. It's in the Dome. Matt Ryan is coming off a great week last week, and the Steelers are coming to town. If you need your receivers to get healthy and have big games, invite the Steelers to play some football against you. But all in all, I'm going to call the advantage at the catching positions to little baby Jesus. Is this game going to be so close that it's going to come down to the kickers? Caleb Sturgis for little baby Jesus going up against the Pats. Adam Vinatieri going up against the Texans in the Hoosier Dome. I think that's what they call it still, right? Sounds about right. Since we're old, we are allowed to just refer to things as what they used to be. Big advantage to Vinatieri there. On the defensive side, Broncos going up against the Chargers. It's in San Diego, division rival. San Diego has a good offense. They can hang with the Broncos. They can put up points. Not going to be a lot for the Broncos defense there. But on the other side, for Animal House, the Seahawks defense. The Seahawks defense has Colin Kaepernick coming to town. Kaepernick has not been good lately. The Niners are completely falling apart. The last time these two teams played in San Francisco on Thanksgiving night, you may have been passed out by them, but the Seahawks defense put up 16 points. I can see them getting that much, again, easily at home, just on sacks, interceptions, fumbles. So, looks like this game is a pretty obvious pick. Hagak, 10-5. ISIS, 9-5. Different records because ISIS had the bye. Hagak was forced to play one extra game because they could not hold on to the division. Another interesting quarterback matchup in this one. For Hagak, Ben Roethlisberger. For ISIS, Matt Ryan. The two quarterbacks that are going against each other this week. There should be a lot of balls in the air. There should be a lot of points in this one. Quarterbacks should essentially cancel each other out more or less. And let me tell you how excited I am this week to be starting a quarterback who's going to score more than 12 points. It's a new feeling for me. It's a good feeling for me. I'm really excited about it. And that's about where my excitement ends because I have a lot of matchup problems this week. Number one, Eddie Lacy is going up against that Buffalo defense, which has been really good this year, stopping opposing running backs. Now, I do have the Buffalo defense, so in a way, I'll profit if they hold Lacy down. But Lacy might not even play. He banged up his hip, had to sit out the very end of last week's game, has been sitting out practices, has hinted that he might not play. Now, if he doesn't play, I'm okay, because coming off the bench will be Mark Ingram, who I like for two reasons this week. One, he's going up against the Bears defense, which is bad, and it's on the road in Chicago on Monday nights. You would expect the Saints to try to grind it out on the ground a little bit. And two, as I mentioned, he plays Monday night. I like having the last guy in a matchup on my team. I like having the guy in the Sunday night or the Monday night game. Maybe it's my optimistic nature where I'd rather root for something than against something. I'd rather root for my guy to get some carries and score a touchdown than root against the other guy's guy to not make enough passes. That's just me. I look on the sunny side of life. But that's not the only problem I have. A.J. Green, who has been incredible, who is a superstar, goes up against Cleveland. Historically, Joe Hayden has held A.J. Green down. He averages something like 50 yards a game against Cleveland, if that. The last time these two teams played, it was so bad that people were wondering if the Bengals were going to cut Andy Dalton on the spot. A.J. Green had 2 points in that one. I had briefly considered, I had talked it through, I had floated the idea of benching A.J. Green this week in favor of Mark Ingram. Ultimately, I realized you cannot bench your stars. If I bench A.J., and he scores 21 points in the breakout game against Cleveland that we've all hoped and dreamed he would have, and I lose because of that, I don't think I'd feel very good over the winter, spring, summer, and into next fall. DeAndre Hopkins. Okay, this should be a good matchup. There's going to be a ton of points. It's inside. It's against Indy. And Andre Johnson is banged up, so Hopkins might get all the attention. The one thing I have read, I'm just taking this from online, Scott. I just read this, okay? This is not my insight. I'm not breaking this report. Vontae Davis, who is good, should be back this week. If he is and he covers Hopkins, might hold Hopkins down. On the other hand, this could be one of those games where Hopkins has like 3 points at halftime, but because it's such a blowout and because Houston has to keep throwing and throwing and throwing, and Johnson's hurt, Hopkins scores like 20 points in the fourth quarter and saves the game. And frankly, I have no other options. What am I going to do? Play Lamar Miller going into New England? I don't love that. Denard Robinson on IR. Justin Hunter on IR. Zach Ertz, definitely not going to play him. Kind of running out of options here, folks. Okay, Calvin against Minnesota, fine. I do like that one a lot. I like it for a couple reasons. One, Minnesota's not very good. 2, Calvin's going to score a lot of points. 3, for every catch that Calvin has, that's 1 less catch for Golden Tate on the back side. That's a double bubble for me. I do like that a lot. Randall Cobb, again, that good Buffalo defense. Cobb hasn't done much lately. After leading the league in touchdowns for a time, he hasn't scored a touchdown in like 4 or 5 games. I feel like Cobb is due for a breakout game. 20 points for Cobb this week. I'm feeling good about that. Cody Parkey going up against Dallas. Going to get some field goals there. That'll be fine. And the Bills against Green Bay. Like I said, if Lacey and Cobb have bad games, probably because the Bills' defense is doing good, there's going to be some points for me there. But I cannot see the Bills putting up more than 6 points. I don't see a pick six. I don't see a fumble return. Obviously, there are going to be no interceptions because Rodgers doesn't do that. Lacey doesn't fumble that much either. Maybe a couple of sacks is the best I can hope for. Probably 5 points out of the Bills. I really don't like what I have here. On the other hand, for Hagak, Arian Foster, Colts are not that good on defense as we talked about. My only 2 hopes here are Foster gets hurt early and goes out, which is possible, or that Indy races out to a 14-0 lead and Houston starts putting the ball in the air, taking the ball out of Foster's hands. DeMarco Murray, Eagles defense, terrible. It's a Sunday night game. Those NFC East Sunday night games usually resemble pinball, tons of points. Feel like Murray's going to be just fine there. Odell Beckham, Redskins secondary is atrocious. I read today online that the opposing quarterback passer rating against the Redskins this year is the highest it's been for any team since the 0-16 Lions. So Eli's had an up-and-down season. I feel like Beckham is going to be able to put up 100 yards and a touchdown easy. Golden Tate, he won't do much, as we mentioned, but McCamey, since he's crafty, is probably going to play Chris Ivory against that bad Titans defense. I think McCamey is smart enough to do that, and I hope that he doesn't, frankly. Demarius going up against San Diego. Demarius, hopefully his ankle is more of an issue than they're letting on, and Peyton has to work with Sanders and Julius Thomas, who's back, and C.J. Anderson, and Demarius can be held under 10. I mean, that's all I can hope for. Maybe Brandon Flowers can slow him down a little bit. Kairos Santos, all right, whatever. Kansas City offense is terrible. And the Dolphins, they're going up against that New England Patriots team, as I've mentioned several times, but they do have a good defense. I think they can pick off Brady. I think they can get a fumble. I think they can get some sacks. But all in all, they probably wash out. 2 defenses, both going up against great offenses. Figure they're both under somewhere between 3 and 8 points. So, time for some picks. I need a 2-0 week this week because the picks only went 1-1 last week. Thanks, Gary. 50-37 on the season. I got to get a little better than that, and I'm running out of time. One of these games is easy to pick. Animal House, 107. Little Baby Jesus, 85. A fine run for Little Baby Jesus. Coming up just a little short, but the way he's taken this team off of the scrap heap is really impressive. And boy, are they set up to be good again next year. And as for the other game, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I have to do this. But there's too much luck involved for me to confidently think I'm going to pull this out. Every matchup for Hagak, a dream matchup. Most of the matchups for ISIS, extremely iffy. I'm painted into a corner here. I'm going to have to hear how I've never technically won a playoff game, even though I've made it all the way to the second round thanks to my bye, even though I've made the playoffs 3 out of 4 seasons. But I'm not going to be able to silence the doubters this week. There's nothing I can do about it. Hagak, 112. ISIS, 75. The ISIS, who have won 6 games in a row, plus a bye. The ISIS, who have recently scored 99.9, 96.2, 96.2, 104.6, 98.4, 93.9, 92.6, and 96.2. The team that has not been below 90 points since week 8. The team that went roaring into the playoffs. A double win in week 13 to win the division and get a bye. A team that has been completely unstoppable for a month and a half. Falls flat on its face in the playoffs and loses. And not that any of you care, and you shouldn't, but in my other fantasy football league, I captured the number 1 seed in the league. Also had a bye last week. Last week was great. Steelers won, going away. I didn't have to worry about fantasy football. I'd busted out of my betting pool. I just sat back like a fan from 1975 and watched the game. Just focusing on that one game. It was great. This week, I think I'm going to lose in my other league too. I think I'm going to lose both leagues, bow out of both playoffs. And oh man, am I going to be drunk on Sunday night and depressed, just sitting there, babbling to myself, wondering when all this misery is going to end, wondering why I bother.